To get the Big Buck Registry after show and other exclusive content right now, go to patreon.com/Big Buck Registry. Today on Deer Hunt.
Just start walking. Don't overthink it. I like to keep it super, simple, stupid. And just every day or every week, gradually add on to it. But for most of us, just get moving. Do some push-ups, do some lunges, do some squats, walk, stuff like that. And then allow your body to adapt and get stronger. And then once you feel like you can do that, then start looking into that type of stuff. Because for most people, they get overwhelmed and then they don't feel like doing it. And then they go back to their old habits of doing nothing.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 297. Brian Austin, Beastmode Archery, Quarantined Fitness. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Rackology. Everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslin Farm and Home storefronts or online at www.rackology.org. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Grizz Friction wood calls, custom-made calls that sound as good as they look. Mountain Deer Taxidermy. If you can dream it, we can make it. www.mountaindeertaxidermy.com. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. And show support for this podcast by visiting bigbuckmerch.com. That's bigbuckmerch.com.
Hey, this is Jeff Johnson with Trophy Scan, and you're about to hear on the Big Buck Registries podcast.
This is Nick Pinizzotto, the CEO of the National Deer Alliance, and you're about to push play on my favorite show, the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Zach Farnball with the Hunting Public, and you're about to listen to one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to the show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we're out of harnesses. We need your help. Anybody that has spare harnesses, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Despite being quarantined, I can't imagine any sportsman sitting at home doing nothing. It's just not in our blood. Let's face it, our playground is the great outdoors, and we practice lots of social distancing without the restrictions of COVID-19. But there may be some other things that we can do just to stay in hunt-ready shape. And we thought of nobody better to give us some at-home fitness ideas to stay bow-ready than Brian Austin of Beastmode Archery. We'll get to our entire interview with Brian Austin in just one moment. But before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. My experience started with a visit to the -33 headquarters in Ashland, New Hampshire, for a tour of the warehouse and factory, followed by an interview with John Glidden, the owner and CEO. John is a straight-shooting New Hampshire Yankee, if ever there was one, and that straight-shooting attitude reflects in his product. It's high-quality stuff that does exactly what the company says it will do. After a steady hike on a cold November day up the backside of a steep New Hampshire ridge, with the sun setting and the temps dropping, I wasn't soaked with sweat. Because of the -33 merino wool base layer, I was comfortably warm and dry and itch-free. Any perspiration was wicked away from my body, and my human scent was neutralized from the natural properties that the wool brings to the table. I was thankful that I was wearing that exact base layer when that dominant buck appeared. Rest assured, I'll be wearing my -33 merino wool base layer next year when the temperatures start to drop. I'd encourage you to check out -33 for yourself. Visit www.minus33.com. That's MINUS bigbuck33.com and grab some base layers for the rest of this season or next. And please let them know you heard about them on the show by using the discount code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the deer news.
Our first story this week: Washington bans recreational fishing and shell fishing to slow coronavirus spread. This story is from the Fox News website and is reported by Michael Bartiromo. Residents of Washington state won't be able to practice social fish distancing amid the coronavirus outbreak. This week, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife issued a temporary order to close all recreational fishing and shell fishing in the entire state in order to further prevent the spread of COVID-19. The news came shortly after Governor Jay Inslee issued a stay-home, stay-healthy order, which required Washington residents to stay home unless out for an essential activity. We've seen an uptick in outdoor recreation at some locations in recent weeks as people have looked for ways to get outside, WDFW Fish Program Director Kelly Cunningham said in a news release issued Wednesday. We've had reports of crowded boat ramps and busy fishing on some rivers, which runs in counters to the governor's direction to stay home and practice social distancing. WDFW's ban went into effect at midnight on March 25th as part of the restrictions. Fishing and shell fishing seasons will be closed for at least 2 weeks. Access to wildlife areas and water access areas will also be restricted for that same time period. Similarly, the Washington State Parks and Recreation Commission has temporarily closed all state-managed wildlife areas or water access points for 2 weeks. Hunting seasons, meanwhile, are confirmed not impacted by any restrictions, WDFW confirmed. WDFW says officers will remain on duty to enforce the ban over the next few weeks. Meanwhile, Michigan's Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department is recommending that sportsmen practice social distancing, urging that they stay 6 feet apart or, in their words, 4 trout or 2 shovel-nosed sturgeon apart. Action Alert, Senate Bill 3422, Great American Outdoors Act. This story is from the National Deer Alliance and is a call to action newsletter for all of its subscribers. In a huge win for conservation, United States senators from both sides of the aisle recently announced that President Donald Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell have vowed to support bipartisan legislation to fully fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Senate Bill 3422, or the Great American Outdoors Act, will provide full and permanent funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund and address the $12 billion maintenance backlog in our national parks, according to Senator Gardner. Essentially, the new bill will combine 2 previous bills, S.1081, the Land and Water Conservation Fund Permanent Funding Act, and S.500, the Restore Our Parks Act. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, created in 1965, provides funding for the land and water conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation projects. The fund is not tax-funded, rather it's funded by royalties collected from offshore oil and gas operations. The Great American Outdoors Act will ensure that the LWCF will be fully funded at $900 million annually for the first time in the fund's history. For reference, the fund is slated to receive $495 million this year, the highest allocation in the last 17 years. Additionally, the new legislation will provide funding for the nearly $12 million backlog of maintenance currently faced on our public lands. Join NDA in supporting legislation that fully funds the Land and Water Conservation Fund and tackles the huge maintenance backlog currently faced on our public lands. Urge your senators to get up to speed on the bill and to support funding for conservation projects, public lands, and outdoor recreation. And take a minute to join the National Deer Alliance at www.nationaldeeralliance.com. There is no cost, and their newsletter is an easy way to stay current on deer conservation. Ethics course required before gathering shed antlers in Utah. This story is from the Herald Extra website. Collecting antlers that fall off the heads of deer, elk, and moose each winter is a popular pastime in Utah. Before heading outdoors to collect shed antlers, though, remember that it is required to complete the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources Antler Gathering Ethics course. After dropping their antlers, male deer, elk, and moose will grow a new set starting this spring. Looking for the shed antlers is a fun activity that a whole family can enjoy. However, late winter and early spring is a tough time of year for deer, elk, and moose, which is why the educational ethics course is required for anyone who wants to go shed hunting between now and April 15th. From late winter through early spring, the habitat that big game animals rely on is usually wet, which means it's more at risk for damage. Fortunately, people can gather shed antlers without stressing the animals or damaging their habitat, and the free Antler Gathering Ethics course will teach how. The Antler Gathering Ethics course can be found on the DWR website at wildlife.utah.gov. After finishing the course, print the certificate of completion and then carry it in a wallet or purse while gathering antlers. Completing the course is mandatory if wanting to gather shed antlers from now through April 15th. If planning to wait until after April 15th to gather antlers, then the course doesn't need to be completed. For more information about gathering shed antlers in Utah, call the nearest DWR office found online at wildlife.utah.gov. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry Deer News. Special thanks to Tim Donzie, Daniel Applebaum, and John Geis for leads on stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Brian Austin from Beastmode Archery. Brian Austin, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Jay, in this day and age with the COVID-19 stuff that's going on. All things considering, I'm home, safe, healthy, so pretty fortunate in that aspect.
Nice. It is a weird world we're in, isn't it? I mean, this is just something we've never seen. We've never seen it in our lifetime. Probably will never see it again, I would think. It seems to surface, every 100 years or so. But, man, it's the world as we know it today, especially with social distancing, is not anything we've ever had to do. So how do we deal with this stuff? How do we take what our lives were and turn it into something that is as normal as possible? And for example, you're in the fitness realm, and how do you take fitness home with you when, especially you were doing a lot of stuff in a gym? There's a lot of different aspects to this, and we were just pre-show talking about the economic impact of this, and we're just talking about what do we do while we're at home right now. So I'd like to get in a lot of the things that you recommend doing at home, and knowing that you're not going to be a collective gathering in a gym doing face-to-face or closely interactive competitions or training or anything like that. I got a feeling you got a solution for all this stuff. So I'd like to tap into your brain there in just a little bit. But first, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? How'd you get into fitness? What's your background?
Yeah, you bet, Jay. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's an honor and pleasure to be on here. So,
thanks.
Part of me is just wondering why the heck you would ask me to be on the podcast. I'm just, a Joe Schmo, but I'll do what I can to help the listeners out with their fitness questions and kind of how to deal with all this stuff that's going on right now. So again, Brian Austin. I'm from Wisconsin, born and raised here in Wisconsin. I am currently 41 years of age, so I've been in the fitness industry for just over 20 years.
Wow.
I went to college. I have a degree in physical education and health promotion, along with business. And I just got into the fitness industry. Really, I've been in athletics through, from early on, primarily football and track through high school. Which that being in football kind of took me away from bow hunting for that time period when you're, a late teen. And then in college, I just didn't have the time to really bow hunt that much either. So, but fitness has been a passion of mine since as long as I can remember. After college, I started a fitness training studio, personal training studio that was a part of a franchise. Had that for several years. And then speaking of the economy, in 2008 hit, the fitness industry took a big hit. Right. And I had a couple locations, several employees. And unfortunately, I had to start laying people off and just couldn't make things go at that time because people were freaking out at that point with what was going on in the economy. So I kind of had to redesign myself in 2009 and started my just me, myself, and I. Just a small studio, training one-on-one, some group classes, and that is known today as Get Fit with Brian is the name of my personal training business.
Gotcha.
So forwarding from 2009 to today, my business has evolved a lot. Fitness was, to me, I was in, like I said, football and track. I did a lot of mountain biking in college, did some boxing outside of college, kind of as a young adult, just trying different things out. Got into trail running, doing some races and stuff like that. And then working with clients and getting to know clients and training them for one thing or another, I would sometimes help or participate in some of the activities that I would be helping clients with, just to, just kind of goes with the trade of things. So it was in 2016, I met my buddy Ed, who I knew through the bow club for on and off a little bit, but he was involved with this competition called Train to Hunt, which is now kind of a nationwide archery fitness competition. Mm-hmm. So I started training him. He started coming to my classes, and he, knowing that I was into archery and into fitness, he's like, you should come try this out next year. So I believe it was 2017, I tried my first Train to Hunt event here in Wisconsin. I did the one in Wisconsin and the one in Pennsylvania, and just kind of fell in love with it. It was an activity, a sport that meshed both of my passions, archery and fitness. So prior to that, I was always doing, trail running or working out, and for a means to be fit and healthy, to be able to bow hunt, to go out to the mountains and chase after elk and stuff like that. But once I learned more about Train to Hunt, I was like, man, this is awesome, because this brings both of those worlds together.
Gotcha.
So 2017, 2018, I was a competitor. Then through that, I guess, people in my area the word started to get out. So then I started having more hunters or more archers wanting to train for these events, because they found that it's fun. It brings like-minded people together, and it's a little competition. It's fun competition, and it's a way to hold us accountable to stay healthy throughout the year. So I started training more hunter athletes, I guess, if you want to call us that. And it just grew and grew and grew to now, if this COVID-19 thing wasn't happening, yesterday would have been the first outdoor class of the year. Mm-hmm. And I have about 30 people that would have been participating in that. So it's grown quite a bit. So 2017, 18, I was a competitor. That winter, that year, I kind of came up with this idea to have a local event, which was called the Beastmode Archery Challenge. And that event was going to be an indoor winter event, just to keep people here in Wisconsin active and bringing them together through the winter months when there's not a lot to do. So I designed that event. It would have been in 2018, I guess. But in that meantime, I called Kenton, who owns Train to Hunt. I said, hey, just to let you know, this is what I'm thinking about doing, not stepping on your toes, but I want to have this event here this winter to keep people motivated and to spread the word about Train to Hunt and get more people involved in your events. He called me back, and within a day, he's like, let's make this an actual Train to Hunt event. So that winter, that was the first winter of the Train to Hunt indoor archery challenges that we did. Would have been 2 years ago now. And then as things just developed through that winter, he asked me if I wanted to direct some of his events that next summer, which would have been last summer of 2019. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went from being a competitor to now being a director of the events and running the events and that type of stuff. So I brought a different perspective to the events, because having been a competitor, I saw what was working, maybe what wasn't working, what we could change, make these events maybe a little bit more fun and interactive for people. So as this thing's just progressed then through last year, and as we had the national championship, we were looking at this year and kind of how we're going to do it. And unfortunately, just because these events are not huge events, we have maybe 50 at most 100 people at these events. So there's just not a lot of money to go around, even just to pay our expenses. So unfortunately, we had to kind of split ways this past year. And so I went back to my original idea of having the Beastmode Archery Challenge be in the winter time. So this past winter, we had a couple indoor events. And then unfortunately, we had to cancel our big one, which was going to be at Vortex Optics, which is just down the road here because of the COVID-19. That was back in March. And then we're going to have another event here in May, which was going to be the Beastmode Endurance Archery Challenge, which was going to be an outdoor event at the ski hill, at the local ski hill. But again, we're having to cancel that event. So the next event, hopefully, that will go through will be in June, and that's called the Beastmode Archery Challenge Games. And we can go into more in depth in what those look like. But that's just kind of the evolution of where I've brought my businesses through. The Get Fit with Brian is still that's my main business, my main job of training people. I have clients of all ages, of all abilities, looking to just be healthy, just general health and fitness goals. To some people are maybe are very avid marathoners or tennis players or golfers, whatever it might be. I've kind of worked with all different types of abilities. So that's the Get Fit with Brian part of it. And then I've evolved my outdoor stuff, my hunter fitness stuff, to what I call GFB Outdoors, basically Get Fit with Brian Outdoors. And that's the working with bow hunters or working with hikers, working with people that want to maybe go on their first backpacking trip or their first elk hunt, and helping them, I guess, just be able to do it to their full potential and not to allow their fitness be the biggest obstacle that they have to overcome.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's go back a little ways, and certainly the things that you're describing with having to shut down different events. I mean, this is happening all across the world. Happening in the United States frequently. Schools are at home, and sports are canceled or delayed until further notice. So, and just going back to like where you started your passion for fitness, it sounds like it started somewhere with some competition, football, things like that. Is that where you were first introduced to some kind of a desire or something that kind of grew deep in your soul that, hey, this is something I need to do for a long time?
Yeah, I would say so. It probably was, as a seed planted way back when I was a little kid. I have 3 older brothers, so it was always a little bit of a competition, around the house. They were actually much older than me, so they beat up on me quite a bit. So it was maybe a survival of the fittest there.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. There's no question. So, I mean, you told me before the show you're an introvert, but it's I think you can tell you're passionate about it, because I'm also an introvert, and I don't speak at length. I don't speak at length for things that I'm not really passionate about, so I can tell you're definitely into everything you're doing right now.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm not much of a small talker, but if you want to talk about something I have a passion about,
right.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So to me, it sounds like, hey, if you want to talk about archery, if you want to talk about hunting, you want to talk about fitness and getting fit to hunt, then we got something we can talk about.
You bet.
Yeah,
you got it.
Nice. So getting into, by the way, the name Beastmode Archery is awesome. Absolutely great name. I don't think there's a better name on the planet for something that involves competition archery. I think it's excellent.
Right.
To me, when I think of Beastmode, like I'm thinking that yes, it's going to be a competitive thing, but it's going to be a hardcore. I'm going to get you in shape right now, and it's going to be. There's nothing fluffy about it. I don't know if that's how you view it, but that's how I view the word beast mode.
Right. It's so the beast mode, the inner beast, is what I like to refer it to as. We all have that inner beast inside of ourselves. Some of us, it's just a lot more fit and louder than others. But we all have that. I should say most of us probably have a desire to be better. Whatever that might be. I'm not saying that you need to be the best of the best, but just to be better than what you were yesterday or last week or last month. And that's what this Beast Mode Archery Challenge is really about, is bringing, we have phenomenal athletes that compete at these events, but we also have people that are in their 60s that have broken bones, broken backs, broken everything in their life, and they're coming out and they're dealing with all the aches and pains that they have to deal with, and they're still giving it their all. And that, to me, those people are working much more harder than the people that are maybe have full capabilities and full abilities to do what they can, but yet they're not applying themselves. So to me, I'm always rooting for the underdog, always rooting for the people that are coming out to these events that have never competed in anything before, but they have a passion for bow hunting, they have a passion for archery, and they see the benefit of being fit, especially here in the Midwest. We have a lot of people that travel west to go elk hunting or mule deer hunting or antelope hunting, and we only have a very small amount of time to be able to do those hunts. And to get out there, and then for us to be overweight or out of shape, and for us not to be able to enjoy those hunts when we've sacrificed so much time and money to be able to make those happen, it shouldn't be happening. Right. So more and more people, I think, are starting to realize that and see that, hey, instead of spending thousands of dollars to get this ultra lightweight gear, how about spend a little effort and lose a little, extra weight and get a little bit better shape, so you can actually go out there and enjoy those trips.
Gotcha. Well, let's get into the whole idea of getting in shape to go out west, because I think that in and of itself is a topic that needs to be discussed. I don't think there's anything light about that either. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. You gotta do some serious hiking. I've never hunted out there, so I'm interested to hear your perspective on what it's like to actually be in shape to hunt out west. That, to me, is a whole different category of in shape. Before we get into that, though, tell me about your interest in bow hunting. I think we kind of established your passion and how you got interested in fitness, but bow hunting, traditionally, like you can be into bow hunting and not have to do much, right? You can.
For sure.
You can find a tree, and it might be a flat walk to a tree stand and climb up a ladder, and you're sitting there for a long time.
Or you might be riding your four-wheeler to the base of your tree stand.
Correct.
And hopping off.
Or in some cases, and I've seen this happen, you drive your pickup right under the stand, and you climb up the ladder from there, and then get back in your pickup and drive out. Right.
Just
depends on where you are.
So by no means am I saying that you have to be fit in order to bow hunt. By no means am I saying that. I'm just so before people get upset about this, I'm not the guy that says you have to be in phenomenal shape to go on a hunt. You don't. It's just a matter of how much you want to enjoy that hunt, especially when you're talking about a Western hunt, or even here in the Midwest, public land hunting. You're trying to get away from people. You're trying to get back into where those animals are not pressured. You might be walking a mile or 2 miles through, up and down hills or through swamps or whatever it might be, lugging your tree stand on your back. So you got to have some type of fitness to be able to do that. Yeah. Jay, I forgot your question.
Yeah, so how'd you get it?
I started rambling.
Yeah, no problem. How did you get into archery? I mean, where did that get introduced into your life?
So my family, I don't know how many years my dad has been. My dad is going to be 80 this New Year's Eve, and he's been hunting as long as I know he has been. So it's just been something that I grew up with. It's been a way of life for us. I remember when I was a little kid taking a little recurve out and shooting at a hay bale. Yep. And then as we got better, we'd have a paper plate, and we'd stick that paper plate on a hay bale and try to hit that paper plate at 10 yards, with these old compound bows or recurves or whatever it is that we had. So it's, and using like toothpicks as sights, because we didn't have, an actual sight on your bow. So we would use toothpicks or something like that to be able to sight your bow in with that. So really, I guess to answer your question, it's just always been a part of who I am and the way that we grew up and our lifestyle.
Kind of like, and I see that a lot in most other sports too. For example, you have a baseball bat, you start swinging a baseball bat, you start playing ball, right? Or you throw around football. Hey, here's a bow and arrow. And you start tinkering with it, right? I remember when I think I was like 8 years old. I got together with my best friend Bruce Pelkey, and we both ordered 2 Bear Archery just super basic compound bows out of the Sears catalog. And they mailed them to our house, and I think we paid $50 each. And they were the most primitive bows by today's standards you've ever seen. They didn't shoot well, cheaply made. But son of a gun, if we didn't have a great time shooting those bows at hay bales with just a paper plate, and we just did it until we got bored and wanted to do something else. But that was the initial time that I can look back and say that's where my first desire came from. And because I had a positive experience, even though the bow was awful, right? And it was just a really rudimentary entry-level bow, but it still made me interested. It had nothing like today's bows, but it was a positive, fun experience with one of my best buds. To this day, I still remember that's how I even got interested in the first place. I didn't really start bow hunting till later in life, but I always look back at that moment that was important in my life to continue on with some kind of archery desire.
Right. No, that's awesome. And I have to give kudos to those people that didn't grow up the way that I did that are getting into the sport. I think it's great that there's more, like our archery club, Blackhawk Bow Hunters. They have a Learn to Hunt program. They have a Learn to Shoot program to get more and more people involved in the sport. Because I think it's if you don't have family or if you don't have close friends that are involved with it, it can be a very intimidating sport to get or activity to get involved with. So,
right.
And that's kind of what, back to the Beastmode Archer Challenge is bringing a lot of those people into it because they see that it's a fitness challenge, but it's also a shooting challenge. So it's getting people that are maybe in the fitness industry that haven't been shooting bows, something different other than, their typical, running activities or weightlifting activities, something different to participate in. So,
right.
But I remember the first deer that I shot with my bow, I think I was 12 years old. And I came home from school, and I think my mom was pissed off at me for something. That was probably a pretty usual occurrence. So I went outside. I think my dad was outside, and I don't really remember this part, but he was like, well, take your bow and walk. We lived out in the country, and we had permission to hunt on our neighbor's farm. So took my bow, walked up. It's probably maybe a mile away, and just not really. I kind of knew what I was doing, but not really. At 12 years old,
Sure.
I've seen my dad. I've gone hunting with him, gone hunting with my brothers. Kind of knew what we were doing. Climbed up in this wooden tree stand back in that time, maybe 10, 12 feet off the ground. No harness. This is before all of that stuff.
I remember that well.
And this group of deer is probably, I'm guessing it was probably September, late September, early October. It was mostly fawns and does that came in and a couple small bucks. And I was shaking like a leaf. I do remember that. And the deer were just like they saw me. They were looking at me. And but long story short, I ended up shooting a little button buck. I had no idea it was a button buck. But I was so excited. I ran all the way home and got my dad, and he came and helped me out with it. So
nice.
But that was the first deer I shot with a bow. I think I was pretty sure I was 12 at that time.
That's very cool. Nice.
And then after that, I just kind of, again, had to take a break because of athletics and stuff, and didn't really get back into bow hunting until 2008, 2009, when, like I said, I had to, close a couple of my businesses and just things were going on, and I was stressed out. My one brother, Tim, kind of got me back into archery, helped set me up with a new bow, and just went bow hunting for the first time in several years, and it was just so relaxing, and it just brought me back to my roots, and haven't stopped since.
Yep.
So
Gotcha. It's a different feel, even from a gun hunt, and I like both, but there's definitely a different feel to archery hunting. Like there's something more intimate about it somehow. I'm not quite sure why that is, other than that you have to be closer, and it's almost like you have to be a little more sharp compared to tracking down a deer. For example, in New Hampshire, there's part of our routine once we have snow is to track. We find a big print and we follow it until the deer eventually shows itself to us. I mean, that's kind of quintessential Northeast hunting. So you could be on foot for quite a while and hunting up into some terrain that is probably similar to what you'd hunt out west. And although I don't know for sure because I've never hunted out west, but it's not for the not in shape. Let's put it that way. It's people, you got to be in shape to do that, and you're going to be going for a while. So doing that with a gun versus hunting with a bow, there's something just more peaceful about it somehow. I mean, it's just there's a part of me that has to bow hunt every single year, even though I do enjoy my gun hunting too.
No, you're exactly right. It's because I've gun hunted just about every year. Even though when I wasn't bow hunting, I would still gun hunt for our week-long gun season. And there is definitely something different about it. I mean, a lot of us here in Wisconsin, gun hunting is more of a social thing. It's more of a family tradition. You have your spot, you go out and you sit and you wait. Or some parts of the state, we do have big sections of public land, so we can do a lot of hiking, a lot of walking around and stuff like that. So, but yeah, the archery season or bow hunting, you just have to be much more in tuned with what's around you. You have to slow things down. You have to, we're so used to fast-paced, life the way it is now, or not so much right now, but the way it has been. But when you step into the woods for archery, you just have to slow things down, listen. And like you said, you have to get that much closer to the animal. Whereas with gun hunting, you could be, several hundred yards away. So there's not as much skill involved, I feel, with gun hunting. Right.
Gotcha. So let's talk about some workouts. I watch you guys on Instagram a lot. I see your workouts that you're doing, and it looks like those were designed. And a lot of the stuff I see at other gyms, but you're incorporating actual hunting equipment into your routine, which I think is excellent because you're training with the equipment that you're going to use in the field. So you're, as I like to tell my son, who I coach, he's still under 12 years old, and when I teach him about baseball and he wants to wear shorts to practice, I say play or dress like you're coming to play. Use the things that you're going to use in the game. Practice hitting with a helmet on. Those are the things that if you don't do that, you're not practicing like you play. So I see you doing a lot of the practice like you play, when it comes to bow hunting. Tell me about that whole development and why bring in all the real equipment instead of just use some other piece of equipment.
Right. Well, really, it's all about specificity of training, meaning like you said, you train like how you're going to perform that activity. So for us, it's bow hunting. So it's backpacking. Again, I guess I'm gearing this more towards people that might be elk hunting or big game hunting where you're going out west. Yep. But this can be modified for, the deer hunters too. But you're using a backpack for your resistance training. Not saying that there's anything bad or that you shouldn't ever use barbells or dumbbells or go to your gym and do stuff like that. There's definitely a time and place for all that stuff. I still do some of that, but not nearly as much as what I used to do, because the squats, the barbell exercises, the bicep curls, all that kind of good stuff. Yes, it's good to do. It's good to help our bodies adapt. Our muscles, our ligaments, our tendons. Using a wide variety of resources, of tools, just helps us be more well-rounded athletes or people.
Gotcha.
But then when I'm specifically training people for a Western hunt, or when I'm specifically training archers for a Beastmode archery challenge, I try to use as much of the real stuff that we're going to be using as possible. That way, lifting a dumbbell over your head is a lot different than lifting this flimsy sandbag that may not have any handles. So you're just incorporating different muscles, or you're incorporating them differently. You have to adapt to different things, whereas we don't always have that perfect handle like a dumbbell when we're out in the woods, climbing a tree stand or putting a tree stand up, or when we're out chasing elk, stuff like that, and we're climbing up a steep hill. we really can't mimic that too much inside of a gym.
Right.
You can to a point, but not a lot.
Right.
So really, the biggest tools that I can say is to have a box. Ours are about 20 inches high and I have some that are about 15 inches high for those that are just starting out, or for those that are much more on the shorter side. 20 inches can be kind of high, but everybody will work up to a 20-inch box. And just doing step-ups, stepping over the box, a wide variety of exercises with just that box. The box also simulates going up a steep hill. Most of us have to, or it could even mimic climbing a tree stand. Getting those legs up high enough, which we don't do in our daily lives. Bringing that knee up past your hip height, which we're doing when we're climbing a steep hill or a mountain or climbing up a tree stand. So it's getting those muscles not only strong, but also working them through the proper range of motion as well, too.
Gotcha.
So the box is a great tool. If you don't have a box, maybe a Yeti cooler or an Arctic cooler, one of those heavier duty coolers that a lot of hunters have. You can utilize that to do your step-ups on. Some type of sandbag. It could be, I recommend, I don't have any here, but a HOTLINE bag. That's the brand. You can get them at REI or go on Amazon. Like a 10-liter or a 15-liter bag, which you can probably max out at least 70 to over 100 pounds of sand in that bag. Not saying that that's where people need to be starting, but you at least have a wide variety of room there that you can utilize just one bag for. And those bags are very, very durable. I mean, you can drop them. You can do a lot of different stuff with them. What's nice is that they don't have any handles. So when you're doing certain exercises, you actually have to grab a hold of them.
Right. So
you're using those, using your gripper muscles, your forearms, your biceps, your shoulders differently than if you're grabbing something like a dumbbell where it's nice and, a nice size where most of us can grab a hold of and feel pretty strong with it. When you grab a big, heavy sandbag, it's just a lot harder to do that.
Right. Seems like you'd use a lot more muscle or different muscles, right, to carry something that doesn't have a handle versus something that does.
Right. You're essentially at a cellular level, you're starting to recruit more muscle fibers, more mitochondria are starting to be triggered and respond. So then you're going to get, you're going to start adapting to that. And then therefore you're going to get stronger and whatnot, probably a little quicker than if you're just using dumbbells.
Yeah. So gotcha. Tell us about more of the exercises that you're using in the gym besides the box and the sandbag. Are there other things that you incorporate into your exercise routines for when you're training people in the gym?
Yeah, so in the gym, I would say, unless you can do this outside too, but walking lunges. Lunges is a great activity, a great exercise to train the lower body. It's a little bit better maybe for squats if people have knee issues or back issues. Lunges would be the next better alternative. Although I like lunges because when you think about it, it kind of mimics, or we're propelling ourselves forward like we do when we're hiking. Squats, how many times other than when we have to take a crap in the woods, when are you making that squat activity in the woods? Not that often, but how many times are you moving forward and propelling yourself forward like you do when you do a lunge? All the time. So trying to be, I guess the term would be functional training, trying to come up with exercises that somewhat mimic the activities that you're going to be doing when you're hunting.
Yep.
So that's why the step-ups is good. The lunges is good. I think upper body wise, we need to be strong in the shoulders, in the back, because for those of us that are sitting in tree stands for several hours, if you have a strong back, a strong core, you're not going to feel as fatigued. Maybe you won't start getting the aches and pains that some people do if you're working on that. And setting up some of these tree stands, especially the guys that hunt on private land. I mean, these stands are pretty heavy and pretty cumbersome, and I've hung many of them. And you have to have some endurance and strength to be able to get that tree stand and in the right position, and especially those heavy ladder stands, getting those things up in the air if you're trying to do it by yourself. Those can be a battle to do. So So overhead presses with dumbbells or barbells, because again, hanging that stand, lifting up that ladder stand, you're doing a lot of overhead stuff. So strengthening the shoulders, the deltoids, the traps, stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
But my favorite movement is probably a burpee. You hear a lot of trainers
Right.
talking about a burpee. Fall to the ground, chest all the way to the ground, and then you're back up as quick as you can, either standing straight up or jumping up. It's a great explosive movement that gets the heart rate ticking. And if you do enough of them, I'm not talking about just 10 or 20, but if you try to crank out 50 to 100 of them, you're going to find out that it is really working just about every muscle group in your body. Your lats are going to start to feel it, your pecs, your arms, your shoulders, your legs are going to start feeling the hips, especially if you're trying to be explosive and jumping up out of that, from the ground. So it is a great exercise, even though most people hate them.
Yeah, right. That's people don't love them, that's for sure. But boy, yeah, it seems like if you do more than 20, that you're going to need to use some other muscle groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's very cool.
And then probably the next thing for those that are backpack hunting is to throw your pack on and do some hikes. With varying the weights. Maybe start out this time of the year, 20, 30, 40 pounds, and then gradually working up, mixing in some heavy pack weights, 100-ish pounds. For those that are elk hunting, packing that elk out is no easy task. So I like to mix in some 100-pound or 100-plus pound packs, just again to get your body so you can get a feel for what your body is going to go through if you are successful and you have to pack that animal out.
Gotcha.
Because we're talking about a much more, just about any pack feels good with 40, 50 pounds in it. But once you start getting 60 pounds and over, packs are not created equal at that time. So for one, it's good to test your gear out. And the second thing is it's good to see how your body is going to react to that. It's a much more torsion on the knees, on the ankles, stuff like that. And I highly recommend using trekking poles. But there's also a number of activities and a number of exercises you can do just with your backpack. You can utilize that. I have a YouTube video that kind of shows a variety of exercises you can use with your backpack as a weight. Instead of a sandbag or instead of a dumbbell or a barbell, you can actually use your backpack for.
Okay. What are you using for weights in the backpack? Are you just taking your own gear, whatever it is, or are you just purposely, throwing a sandbag in there that's 40 pounds?
Right. Training-wise, right now, it's just a sandbag.
Okay.
So pick your weight, throw that sandbag in there. As we get closer to season, I like to actually use the gear that I'm going to be hunting with, just so that you can, again, you're testing out your gear. You're testing out to see how it's going to ride. Because for those of us that are maybe looking to go out west for your first trip, you're driving 20 plus hours to get to the trailhead. And then it looks like, a garage sale when you empty out your vehicle to pack your pack if you haven't done that already. So it has to be a horrible feeling if you pack your backpack and you're hiking in and you get a half a mile in and you realize that you put something that maybe should have been in the middle or the top of your pack is on the bottom. So it feels like you have a monkey on your back. So that's why as we get closer to season, I always recommend people that you actually put the gear that you're going to be using in your bag and start training with that. So you get a feel of how, because a 40-pound sandbag feels a lot different than 40 pounds of gear just because of how much space that takes up in your back, in your pack.
Right. That makes sense. So do you end up incorporating during this training exercise a shooting regimen with your bow, understanding that if you're in a real world scenario, hunting elk, for example, you might be hunting up a mountain, you got all your gear on, you put it down, you're on top of an elk, you get an elk to come in. You might have to almost control your heart rate real fast in order to take a good, clean shot. How do you incorporate that into your mix? You
bet. That's the most important aspect of it, because it all comes down to making that shot. We can all be as fit as a whistle, But if we can't make that shot under pressure, or if we just had to climb, 300 vertical feet to get to that bugling bull, and now we're huffing and puffing and he's right there, and you don't have the muscle strength or the stamina to even pull your bow back, well, you're crap out of luck there.
Right.
So the shooting aspect is what we do during my hunter fitness classes, where it's a full-fledged boot camp class, where we're doing a lot of different activities, a lot of different movements, and then we incorporate shooting with an elevated heart rate.
Okay.
And we start out fairly close, 15, 20 yards, and then we start working our way back as it gets closer to the season. But what that does is it gets us used to shooting with an elevated heart rate, or for those of us that have buck fever or get excited in the tree stand and your heart rate's pounding, it's hard to mimic that emotion when we're just practicing. So that is why we do burpees. That is why we do some running or some exercises in between shooting, is to get that heart rate elevated as if it was buck fever, or to get that heart rate elevated as if it's a bull coming in, or you've just spent 6 days in the mountains and you're just tired and fatigued, and now you had to chase after that bull. So it's just putting us in different scenarios so that we can be better prepared for when that opportunity arises.
Gotcha.
So I know a lot of people are why do you do this type of stuff? But this is why. So that when that opportunity arises and we're out of breath or whatever it is, we are somewhat familiar with how to make that shot. Or if our hands are sweaty, doing these workouts and stuff, we get sweaty, or nose, your sweat's dripping off your nose. Your anchor point might be a little different because now that you're sweating, the string might slide in a little bit more, or the release might feel different, or your bow hand might feel different. So it's practicing for all of those different scenarios will get us prepared for when the time comes.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you plan on, in the gym or even when you're practicing outside the gym, getting your heart rate up, doing a bunch of those exercises that are really going to get you going pretty good, and then having a bow and arrow nearby to take a shot at some target. Is that
Right.
what you recommend?
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
mean, first of all, you got to have proper bow mechanics. You have to, obviously have your bow sighted in and all that stuff. And once you feel confident with your shooting form and, like your bow sighted in and stuff like that, then start incorporating, again, just maybe some burpees, or maybe just even some body weight squats. If you're totally new to this, just stand there, crank out 10 squats, pick up your bow and try to make that shot as efficient and quick as possible, because I think that's the other thing we don't practice a lot, is that in reality we usually have more time than what we think we do when that time arises and to make that shot go off. But a lot of us rush that.
Right.
So I even try to say rush your shot and see how it feels. Get that heart rate going, do some burpees or whatever activity it might be to get your heart rate going, and then try to get that bow pulled back and make the shot as quickly as you can, and just to see how accurate you are.
That's a great idea. Because certainly I've had situations where you're not expecting the deer to show up as fast as it did, and you got to crank one out fast, right?
Right.
But a lot of us don't practice that way. I don't think I practice that way, but that's a great idea. That's to practice quickly and see how well you can do, and then try to improve on that, I would assume.
Right. And we have in part of our events, we also have a 3D portion. So like our outdoor events that are coming up, we'll have, the physical portion with some shooting under stress, under high heart rate. But then we also usually have about a 20 target 3D course.
Right.
So on that course, though, very rarely will we have a shot whereas you're just standing and you make that shot. Usually it will be where you draw kneeling, then you have to stand and shoot, or maybe you draw behind this tree and you have to step left or right and make the shot. Very realistic hunting scenarios.
Right.
One of them is 30-second hold. You draw, you have 30 seconds, you have to hold that back before you can make the shot. And then everybody's favorite is the 2 and 10. So you draw, and then once you shoot, time starts, and you have 10 seconds to load another arrow, knock it, and make that shot. So you're practicing that follow-up shot,
Right.
because I think a lot of us are have the rule of, I'm going to keep flinging arrows until that animal's down if I have, clean shots. So learning how to knock your arrow, learning how to draw it back quick and get on target and make that shot on a follow-up shot is important.
Right. Real world scenarios is what you're creating.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
So kind of going back to your origins of physical fitness, where it sounded like it started with a competition of sorts through athletics, is training for bow hunting in the manner that you're doing, is it important to include some kind of competition through your challenges that you're doing, or can it be done independently? Is there a reason that we should do it in a competitive sense?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know a lot of people don't think it should be a competition, because I get emails and comments and stuff. But I firmly believe we're all different, so you have to go with what If you're really not this type of person, then just don't do it. To each his own. If I have no problem with those people, you train, you do stuff on your own, but. For example, right now with us being, this social distancing, I'm not able to be able to train my people. We don't have class in person. I just got a text from one of my guys yesterday, Brandon. He was like, "This really sucks. I miss working with people. I miss training with people because it pushes me to work harder than when I'm just doing it on my own." So that's really what it's about, is that when you have a group of people that you get to train with, or when you have a competition that people get to come together and compete, it's accountability, right?
Yep.
Because I'm even guilty of this. If I don't have something to train for, I start procrastinating. I start putting in an extra 2 or 3 scoops of ice cream at night.
Right.
I may not push myself as hard in my personal workouts, but when we have people to train with, or when we have an event that we're training for that is a competition, I think that just puts an extra little motivation in us to get a little bit better.
That makes sense. All right, so now let's take that a step further. Knowing that a lot of us are quarantined and that we're all practicing social distancing, and that you're not in the gym and you're not able to do the competition face-to-face, how are you taking it home? What are you doing for your clients now while we have to... And we still want to work out. We still want to get in shape. We still have targets and goals and need to get trained, assuming that this virus eventually vacates so we can get back to life as usual and plan for some fall hunts. Is there anything different that you do at home? And can you do like individual training plans so that you're not letting all your hard work slide when you're in quarantine for 2 to 3 months?
Right. Well, thankfully for technology, I use Zoom. So I have a handful of clients that I train, basically instead of us doing it one-on-one in my training studio, it's one-on-one. They're in their workout room at home or in their living room, and I'm here where I am. And I'm just kind of giving them instructions on what to do and checking their form and watching them work out and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm able to do right now. In terms of with my clients, I do have some boot camps, I guess. Mm-hmm. Some of my classes over Zoom, like tomorrow night, we'll have maybe 10, 12 people that I'll be watching them. So I'll be, barking out the orders and telling them what to do and timing them and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be able to watch, make sure that they're doing things the right way. So there is that. I have that option right now, even though it's not, the best option. And then I also am texting people that want specific workouts or things to do. But really right now, if you don't have any of those resources available, it's throw a backpack on or even just your body weight and go for hikes. Walking is probably one of the most underrated exercises you can do. I think if most of us, I've read some studies, if most people walk 2 miles a day, it's something like 80% of the nation's back problems would go away.
Right. Because
walking just, for one thing, it will probably help us lose weight, but it strengthens our butt muscles. It strengthens our hip muscles. Therefore, we have a stronger foundation, so our back isn't having to compensate for our hips being out of whack. So it just walking does a lot of stuff. So get outside, go for walks, go for hikes, do some push-ups, do some burpees, just some body weight exercises. There is, everybody and their brother right now on social media seems like they're fitness experts. So there's
Right.
there's a lot of things, a lot of places that you can watch, that you can go on YouTube and just get some ideas. And for me, I'm not a trainer that there's really no wrong or right way of doing it. There's better ways of doing it, but there's no wrong or right way of doing stuff.
Right.
Odds are you're not going to hurt yourself unless if you're lifting a heavy amount of weight. Okay. Bending over, doing exercises, the old myth of you shouldn't do a squat. You shouldn't allow your knees to go past your toes when you're squatting down or when you're doing a lunge. Well, news is that every time you go upstairs, your knee is going past your toe.
Right.
So there's daily activities where your knee's going past your toes, and that's been something that's been said you should never do when you're exercising. Well, you do it every day. You do it every time you get out of a chair. So as long as you're not lifting, a heavy amount of weight or more weight than what you should, or putting yourself in some vulnerable positions, you're probably not going to hurt yourself. You might be stiff and sore because you're doing something you haven't done in a while.
Right.
But you're not going to permanently hurt yourself.
Gotcha. So really, just if you don't have access to your stuff, or if you just can't get online or whatever, and the best thing is put a backpack on, go for a walk.
Yeah. Go. That's probably the first thing. If somebody's listening that is pretty much a total couch potato, just start walking.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. I like to keep it super, simple, stupid.
Right.
Keep it super simple, and just every day or every week gradually add on to it. There's so many fitness programs out there that are overly confusing or complicated. That maybe for somebody that's a bodybuilder or somebody that's training for a specific event or sport should be on something like that. But for most of us, just get moving.
Yeah. Right.
Do some push-ups, do some lunges, do some squats, walk, stuff like that, and then allow your body to adapt and get stronger. And then once you feel like you can do that, then start looking into that type of stuff, because for most people, they get overwhelmed and then they don't feel like doing it, and then they go back to their old habits of doing nothing.
Right. Yep. And I can attest to that whole strategy. Not too long ago, back in February 27th, I was diagnosed with coronary artery disease, and I had to go in and have 2 stents put in my LAD, which is also known as the cardiac, the widowmaker cardiac artery. And the day I got out of the hospital, it's only an overnight procedure, I had a 95% blockage in the LAD, and they did their thing, and then the next day they said, all right, go home and go for a walk. That's how fast the recovery is. They want you to get up and get going. And ever since then, and they start you off on a plan, which is to walk 7 minutes twice a day for the beginning, and then you gradually increase it. And now, just over a month later, right, February 27th to today, I'm walking a minimum of an hour a day, maybe 30 minutes or an hour. Sometimes on weekends,
awesome.
when I have more time, I'm going 2 hours, and I'm hiking up and down hills. I thought I was out of shape. Turns out I had a blockage, and this is an old thing too. So what I found is that my heart, my other 2 vessels, my other 2 cardiac vessels had done some compensating because of my blockage. So it was allowed to an extent, and it got to the point where my symptoms were too regular. Like I could recreate it every time I tried to do something hard. And now what I have is a situation where I bet I could beat a lot of people who are just regular walkers or hikers, because I have a lot of extra capacity built in now that I have all 3 vessels clean, and 2 of them are larger than normal. So I'm going up pretty steep hills on a lot of these walks at a steady pace with barely taking a deep breath. It's night and day. I forgot what normal felt like.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, first of all, you're lucky to be alive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I'm glad that you're still here. So that's a near-death experience that you got through. So good for you. And I guess a couple points just to touch on what you said there. One is, starting out with 7 minutes, even though you felt like you probably could have done more, part of that, why they start out so low, is just to form that habit.
Right.
Because if they told you, well, you need to go out and walk an hour, well, that's a whole dang hour. Most people aren't willing to sacrifice that amount of time.
Right.
So you start out small so you can see, okay, I can do this. And then you start feeling better about yourself. You're feeling good. And it's like, okay, now I can start moving it up. Even so, that's another good tip is for people that maybe aren't doing anything. Don't try to go out and, go balls to the wall right away. Just start out small, right, so that you can form that habit.
Right.
And the other thing is I've worked with a number of clients, and I can think of a couple in particular that were very overweight, but they wanted to get into running or whatever activity it was. Both of these, one was a runner and one was part of my hunter fitness class. And they worked hard. They pushed themselves hard. And I knew I can see it in them because as they start losing weight, because they're used to carrying that weight around, mm-hmm, their VO2 max, their cardiovascular fitness is already above what most people that are in somewhat shape but aren't carrying around that weight, because their heart and lungs have had to adapt to carrying that weight.
Right.
So a lot of people that are in that situation, as they lose that weight, I mean, their fitness just spikes up, right, tremendously, because they already have that cardiac output because they've been carrying the weight. Now that they don't have that 50-pound backpack on them, they can go out and just start zooming by the people that have been training for a long time,
right,
that maybe didn't have that excess weight. So,
right. Yeah, it has been quite a journey in the recent days for me. And these days I miss, like, if I don't go for my 2:30 minutes or an hour, if I don't get at least in 60, I feel like I've deprived myself. I miss it if I can't get in that second walk. So I'll find other things. I'll go down in my gym and I'll find some other things to stay busy to replicate that in some capacity. But one of the things that I noticed was that because I hadn't been much of a walker in recent years, even though I do hike during the hunting season, although labored, the last few years have been very labored for me trying to get up and down mountains. Again, just assuming I was out of shape, but there was more to the story. These days, what I found out is because I was starting to walk so much that I didn't have great equipment. My feet were getting pretty banged up. My shoes were not the best. That I had to buy some new shoes. So it seems like some equipment might be important too. Once my feet weren't ready for it, they weren't ready for the mile hike every single day, or the 5 mile hike every day. It was not prepared for that. So my feet were feeling pretty sore, blisters and cuts, and being on antiplatelet medicine at this point. I had just a smidge of a sharp toenail cut into my other one, and I came out and my toe was all bloody. So these are the things you have to prepare for, right? When you're just starting to get going and you're going to do some kind of regimen, proper equipment might be important in this scenario too. And maybe you can speak of that a little bit.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's part of this, what we've been talking about is practicing or training with the gear that you're going to be hunting with. So, if you're going to be, obviously if you're hunting elk, you're going to be wearing probably some kind of boot. So, right, be hiking with your boots, try out different socks, different wool socks, have a liner. You just need to test out a lot of different things, because what works for one person may not work for you. But I mean, the two things that can ruin a hunt, or at least a Western hunt, in the first day, and one is your footwear, your boots, and the second thing is your backpack.
Yep.
So your boots, you're putting on miles every day. If you got to try out different boots, I mean, there's, you ask 300 hunters, you probably have 500 different responses, right?
Yep.
So you got to figure out what works for your foot. If you have feet, I have a lot of foot issues and ankle issues just from athletics.
Right.
So I have professional orthotics that the podiatrist made for me. That made a tremendous difference because my feet would hurt all the time.
Yep. So
some people are fortunate and they can just put on anything and they have no problems at all. So, but you gotta listen to your body. If your feet are hurting just after a 2-mile hike, then you need to, be changing things up, especially if you're having a heavy backpack on. You're going to need something a little bit stiffer than if you're just walking or running.
Right.
Because you have that much more weight coming down and you just need a little bit more of a stiffer footbed there. So, but there's oodles of boot manufacturers. Just do a little research but that's an important thing. Those are the two things to skip out on is your boots and a good backpack if you're carrying a lot of weight.
Yep. And I could see that because it's one thing to run on an indoor cushy track in jogging shoes, and it's another thing to hike up and down mountains on boulders and terrain that is going to test every single way you're going to twist. Like, that's the one thing I've noticed, even going from asphalt to dirt to off-road, the correct shoe means a lot, and in this case, correct boot would mean a lot too.
Right. And to kind of circle this back to your training then is if you have a park or trails nearby, is to do your hikes on trails. Mm-hmm. But again, if we're going out west, you might be lucky and have a trail that you can hike in on to your base camp or to your bivy camp. But when you're hunting, you're not on trails. You're walking through the wilderness. So if there's some public land that's close by, throw on your backpack and go out and walk through that woods. Get used to going over deadfall. Get used to maybe crawling under a low-hanging branch with that pack on, because as you duck under, that pack is going to feel different. It might pull you to one side, or if you're stepping over, deadfall, it's going to maybe toss you around a little bit. So you need to train as if you're going, for those real-life scenarios.
Yep.
If you have hills, go straight down those hills instead of taking the trail and, having the switchbacks. A lot of times you're just going to be, bombing straight down that mountain or going straight up. So practice that with your boots, with your pack on, that type of stuff. Even carrying your bow if you can. Right. If you're not going to get in trouble, because it feels a lot different carrying a bow, maybe get a dumbbell. If you don't want people freaking out that you're carrying a bow around the park, get a 10-pound dumbbell. Even though it's not going to feel exactly the same, at least that weight is in that hand. Because when you're elk hunting and you're hiking for 10, 12 hours a day, that 10 pounds gets pretty heavy after a while.
Sure does. Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of circling around on that, the last thing that I really want to kind of ask you, and this might, and often probably goes overlooked, you're training to a high level to get to wherever you want to get to. I've also seen that you've got a big variety of people that you're training. It could be the older person who's overweight, who just likes hunting, and they're not keeping up with the 20-something that's super fit and flying through the course. I've noticed that on some of your things, but everybody's trying it, and I think that's important. How does diet fit into all this stuff? I've had some experience recently where diet is very important in my life compared to what it was.
Right.
So what are your feelings on performance and supplements and things like that?
So we're going to open up that can of worms right now.
A little bit.
There's this is going to be a rabbit hole, but diet, I think, is the biggest battle. When I'm working with somebody, Joe Schmo that wants to be healthier, okay? It's not the getting that person to move and to exercise. It's to get that person to put the right stuff in their mouth and not be filling it full of crap throughout the day.
Right.
So for some of us, we can eat whatever we want and it doesn't make a big deal. For others, just one bite of something, and it's going straight to our hips or whatever it might be. So really you have to take this case by case scenario. And that's why, what I do and working with people individually, I can really tailor that to that person. And people just have to take the initiative to do some research and to do some self-education, or to consult with a trainer or somebody that knows, about nutrition and how it affects the body. Because there's just so much information out there. There's so many fad diets or this or that, which I think out of all of them, there's always something good that comes out of all of them. But it just is, it really comes down to what you can be consistent with your lifestyle, because consistency is the key to success when we're talking about fitness, when we're talking about nutrition and stuff like that.
Right.
I also firmly believe that if we're specifically talking about weight loss, nutrition is a bigger effect on your weight than your exercise. Or nutrition you can lose weight quicker by changing your diet than by exercise. If we're only talking about weight loss, okay, we're not talking about health benefits or being fit, just weight loss. That's how big of an indicator that nutrition is on how we function. So with that said, there's a lot of popular diets right now. There's the low fat diet. There's the having a brain fart right now, Jay.
Sorry, you can just throw a dart and hit a target that has a new diet on it. There's about 10 of them. There's
right.
Keto. There's
the keto diet. There's the high protein diet. So
carnivore diet.
Right.
Yeah,
the carnivore diet. So you have to match. Some people are so OCD that they have to weigh out their food, or it has to be the exact same thing every day. But you're not doing the exact same thing every day. So your diet should really affect, or your output should really reflect your input, and vice versa. Okay. So right now with COVID-19, a lot of us being stuck at home and we're just not as active, but maybe some people are more active because they actually have time to go for walks and stuff like that. But let's say the average person probably is not exercising as much as they should. So what I would say is that you need to probably tailor back the carbohydrates, tailor back the ice creams, the breads, all that kind of stuff, because you're just not utilizing that glucose. Basically, glucose is the sugar that's in your bloodstream or in your muscles that we use as energy. So if you're not being really active, then you don't need that excess carbohydrates in our diet. So maybe up the fats and proteins a little bit to help curve your appetite, to help curve maybe some of that stress eating that people are doing right now, and it'll help you make you feel more full and more satisfied for a little bit longer amount of time. That's the same thing I would recommend for people that are trying to lose weight, is not necessarily go on a no-carb diet, because I don't think that's a healthy thing. Our brains, the only thing that our brain can use as energy is carbohydrates. So we need a certain amount of carbohydrates every day in order for us to operate the way that we should. But I think it's a pretty good assumption that most people have too many carbohydrates in their diets to begin with.
Right.
Proteins and fats, I think more people can eat more fats, but as long as it's good, healthy fats, coming from some of your lean meats or your wild game. Wild game is pretty lean anyways, but it has some fat. Your avocados, your eggs, I eat bacon every day. It's just, I love bacon and sausage and stuff like that. So, but you have to know you, and, some people may not, if you have high cholesterol or it's something is hereditary, maybe you shouldn't do that. So, but I think in general, people just shouldn't eat as many carbohydrates, unless if they're being super active.
Right.
There's a lot of athletes that are on the keto diet, and I would argue that those people would do better if they ate more carbohydrates, just because they would have that source of fuel that they could use quicker.
Right.
There's certain people that wouldn't agree with that, but I think physiologically that's just how we are designed. So,
gotcha. So
in terms of supplements, we can talk about supplements too. But, go ahead.
That's another rabbit hole, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But there is, I guess, just to touch a little bit on supplements.
Sure.
So there's a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of crap that's out there. Okay, one company that I've been using for at least the last 5-6 years is Wilderness Athlete. They are a supplement company. that is in the hunting industry. Their passion is hunting and making sure that us as hunters have the right supplements and fuel for our bodies when we're out being active. So that's my one plug for Wilderness Athlete. I think they have great supplements. Are there supplements that are better? Yes. But for the money, I don't think you can get better than what they offer. I think there's a lot of companies out there that have fillers and just crap in them that we don't need and aren't good for us. So
Right. Gotcha. All right. That's a good way to wrap up that, I think. Cool, man. I appreciate that. Let's turn to one of our favorite segments here on the show, and that's you got to tell us a good deer hunting story. I don't know if you had prepped for that. I was hoping you'd come up with a good one. We're all ears if you got one.
Boy, having been a deer hunter for 20 plus years, I have thought about it, and just nothing really sticks out because growing up in Wisconsin and in kind of the heart of the CWD area, and through the late 90s and the 2000s, I mean, we've killed a lot of deer, both bow hunting and gun hunting, because that was part of their plan, is to eradicate the herd as much as possible to get the CWD out of the herd.
Doing
that
their
has
own,
not happened.
Only their own social distancing, in other words.
Right. But I would say I don't really have a favorite deer story. I would say it's probably dating back to some of the ones when it was me and my family gun hunting together on the land that we grew up near. The biggest buck that I've shot bow hunting, I shot a few years ago on my buddy's Vic's property, and that just happened so fast. He came in. It was a morning hunt. I think it was October 21st. It was kind of one of the first cool days in October, which is why I went out in the morning. And I think at 7:00 a doe came in. I shot the doe, decided to stay in the stand. Hour later, a couple bucks come in, and was able to get him on the ground. But really, it's probably some of the funnest times is probably gun hunting, doing some of the deer drives here in Wisconsin, and right. Just being with family and friends. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, there's just numerous encounters doing deer drives with friends and family. That's some of the most fun you can have as a group. And certainly. Individual challenges might be more meaningful at certain times, but there is a lot of fun when you're with a group of people doing that.
Right, or even just the last couple of years going on some big chunks of public property that you can hike for miles.
Right.
And going with a buddy and just kind of using your gun season as a scouting trip and scouting different areas and stuff like that. That's kind of why I gun hunt these days, is just to get out and walk around and to scout.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
All right, let me hit you with 10 rapid fire questions then.
Oof.
All right, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
These aren't going to be very rapid, Jay. I'm not good on the spot here, buddy.
I know. I should have put that in the outline too. Huh?
Yeah. I would say number one hunting tip of all time is to practice. Practice your weapon.
Yep, that's a great one. We all have these things that we really love to take hunting with us. Sometimes we leave it in the truck or at home, and when we're out there and we're in the hunt, it drives us crazy if we don't have it with us. What's that one thing for you?
I'd have to say snacks.
Snacks. Nice.
Probably a bag of trail mix, or I'll tell you this, chocolate.
Yeah.
Yep. I always take chocolate with me because that's just rather be an all-day sit, or you're in the backcountry, that chocolate just makes you feel better.
Absolutely does. It's mood altering, and it has good fat content in it, and some good gives you energy really in multiple ways. Right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
People that don't try. People, I shouldn't even say try. I say bad attitudes.
Yep, that's a good one. All right, how old are you today?
41.
41. What would you tell the 20-year-old Brian Austin, knowing what you know about life?
Slow down.
Slow down. That's a very common answer for people that are over 40. I've gotten that. It's pretty funny. All All right, you're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world. You meet a stranger. They strike up a conversation. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
Boss people around.
Nice. All right. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had a perfect bar with a cup of coffee.
All right. Very good. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Get after it.
All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
I'd say my parents.
Yep. Very good. And why?
Just because they raised a good family and they're retired. They're almost 80 and they're still, living their dream, I guess.
Nice. Very good. All right. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Well, prior COVID-19.
Prior. Yes. Prior to that. What's a normal one?
Get up by 5, start seeing one-on-one clients at 6:30 in the morning. Usually see clients until mid-afternoon, and then I'll have a few-hour break in that mid-afternoon time frame to do stuff with whatever it might be. Run errands, do stuff for the Beastmode Archery Challenge, do social media, that type of stuff for a couple hours, and then I'll usually have a class in the evening, like a boot camp class or my hunter fitness class. That will be in the evening. And then off to bed and repeat. Very
nice. All right. And then finally, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Deer hunting day. Not elk hunting, but deer hunting.
Deer hunting.
I would say, well, it depends. If I'm hunting public property, I will scout a little bit or walk in with either my tree stand or my trophy line tree saddle, depending on what I'm hunting with or where I'm going. And scouting a little bit on the way in, looking for fresh sign. This is on public property. And I like to take my time and, that last several hundred yards before I think where I'm going to be hunting, almost hunt my way to the stand and set up, be very methodical, and then set up and stay as long as I have time for, rather it be all day or few hours.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Excellent. Sometimes we create a lot more questions on the show and we do answers. And if we have more answers or if people listening to this have more questions, where can they find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, they can find me at GFB Outdoors.
Okay.
Or Beastmode Archery Challenge. I have 2 Instagram pages there. Facebook, they can find me at, I believe it's Get Fit with Brian. I have a Facebook page for that. And Beast Mode Archery Challenge, I have a Facebook there as well, too. YouTube, I think it's Brian Austin is my YouTube thing. But if they search GFB Outdoors or if they search Beast Mode Archery Challenge on YouTube, they should be able to find me one way or the other there. Email is trainwithbrian@gmail.com.
Very good. Well, Brian, I got to tell you, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I've learned a lot. I really love what you're doing. It's fun to watch people train for something specific in a different way. It's not just going to the gym and watching some standard exercise fitness videos. These are real people, and when I say real people, I mean a big variety of people. So they're real people because you have a large variety of athleticism and fitness, people that are old, that are young, and they're all coming into your place, and they're using real-world situations with real-world equipment, and you're teaching them how to become fit for the real practice of whatever hunt they're going on, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that as well too. So I have a passion for people and helping people and just bringing those people together and encouraging one another and stuff like that. So definitely for any of your listeners, if they have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks to Brian for coming on the show. I know I've been going a little stir crazy around the house, trying to keep up with the kids' schoolwork and playing teacher and playing podcaster and still trying to do my regular daytime job, all in the same household with the same things still kind of going on as they are. But I am getting out. I'm getting about, walking every day, feeling good about the physical part of it. Just there's a mental aspect of this. And I think, adding some things that are a little little more rich, things like archery training and shooting the bow, and just doing some things maybe we haven't done before. Might be interesting and to pass the time away and actually prepare you for bow season come the fall. So I hope everybody's doing well out there. Stay fit, stay well, and don't let this thing get you down. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm J. Scott Ammann. We'll see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunt Podcast.